This is a Private Investigator Experience podcast, and I'm your host, Phil Little. I'm going to answer a question before I get into this I've been asked. There's these two pictures behind me here. The one on the bottom says GSG-9, and I was asked, is that you in that? And I said, I wished. That's Captain Lemmy Weigold, who was with the founder, Major Wagner, when they formed GSG-9, and he became a close friend and head of our station in Germany, and continued on after he retired. And then that is me in the top helicopter. That's about 1,200 feet over the city of Los Angeles. Started with an article that La Figaro magazine from Paris came to do on me and my life. And over time, I did that 3 or 4 other times with other publications, and decided, I'm not going to do that anymore. I just had a little strap on me there that if I jumped in the helicopter, I probably would have gone out. So I decided that was dangerous enough. But anyway, that answers those questions. Anyway, it's your first time. I own West Coast Detectives International, a 102-year-old global security firm. And I work my cases from my military, law enforcement, intelligence service, and global security background. Then I add just a touch of my biblical worldview to come up with solutions for our clients. I have questions over the years about the difference between covert investigations and commercial cover investigations, which is done in the private sector, but also is used a lot more in the public sector. Set C, advent of biometrics. I was first introduced to the intelligence gathering and its importance in my early days in law enforcement work. And when I left law enforcement for the private sector, a police chief friend encouraged me to keep building my intelligence files. It would pay off over time. So I continued to do that. The key, of course, to intelligence gathering is having assets on the ground in places where you need them to get the kind of information you want. I didn't know that when I started in the private sector, where the journey would take me, and all the countries I would wind up working in. In my early days of being a private investigator working out of Victorville, California, after I'd left the sheriff's department, and being a one-man operation, I kept my police chief friend's advice in mind. It wasn't long after I started my private work that I moved to North Hollywood, California. And there my agency began to grow. And in 1977, about 5 years after I started, I took over West Coast Detectives and Special Police Patrol, which was founded in 1922, and it was 55 years old in 1977 when I took it over. During this time, I learned in the private sector, it was much easier to recruit human assets than government covert assets who would be open to treason from their countries. I also learned as I started traveling and meeting with people in law enforcement, government intelligence, and counterterrorism officials, they were open to working with me because I was in the private sector, and West Coast Detectives was an international known name. It had been around for a long time. It wasn't a startup cover organization that governments have used at times. Prior to my taking over West Coast Detectives, I had been in Israel, and by 1978, I was on the ground in Israel and southern Lebanon quite often. The more I learned about terrorism and what was going on in the Middle East, I felt that there was going to be a need in the U.S. in the future for counterterrorism. And those threats would probably come from Europe, not directly from the Middle East to start. You may say, why Europe, when the PLO was expanding in the Middle East? Well, the PLO was still a regional and struggling organization trying to get a foothold in the region and trying to gain support from other country backers such as Russia. And I discovered when we were in those terrorist training camps in southern Lebanon that evidence was there that the KGB had been there working with them, helping in training and organization. But terrorism was also flourishing in Europe, and they had their eyes on the U.S. as targets. At a time when these terrorist organizations were mostly young people, and many upscale, they weren't down and outers, they were children of aristocrats and very successful, wealthy people, but they had this Marxist communist and that they were going to help right the evils of capitalism And these groups, the ones in Germany, they were in France, they were in Spain, Belgium, and then they were up in Ireland in the IRA. They started connecting across countries, and they begin to share their individual talents and abilities with each other. The main one was the NRA, which was experts in making, and they shared those bomb making techniques and abilities with others down across Europe, which caused a lot of the explosions. And in fact, in Paris in 1986, they had 12 bombs go off in one day in Paris. And that was a lot due to the result of the training by the IRA. And that was what really turned the tide in Paris in that era against terrorism, with the public rising up. My building assets in Europe started with a family friend at the French National Police in Paris who was in the counterterrorism and intelligence section. One of the experiences I had at the French National Police, probably many of you don't remember Carlos, the Jackal, the terrorist. If you're a little older, you probably do. He was very active starting in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and he was the ghost. He was this famed operator that everybody was after, every country was after, and he would come and go, and he wasn't even identified for a long time. And my friend to the French National Police had been working on him, and he had a stack of files there, 3 or 4 foot thick. They were just on the floor up to the top of the desk. And I got to rummage through those and see some things about the Jackal, and that was exciting for this American PI. With my friends' contact across Europe, I found myself meeting with key people in Scotland Yard, where the head of the famed Black Museum, who was considered one of the top crime-solving minds in Europe, became a close friend and a long-time head of my station in London. The Black Museum was unique. It housed the cases of unsolved crimes. They had Jack the Ripper, all the evidence and files there. And my friend Bill's job was to try to use that evidence and solve those old cold cases. It's a fascinating museum. It wasn't open to the public. You had to be either law enforcement or something to do with the justice field to get an invitation to see it. I was amazed at the open door I had at Scotland Yard. Part of the intrigue was their fascination with the American PI. I had many great adventures with my Scotland Yard friends. One wild chase I'll never forget, of the many I had there, was in a plainclothes car, following a police car with a siren and red lights in heavy London traffic. 4 lanes of traffic. We were in the lane, second lane from the right. Our car was a plainclothes car on the tail of a marked police car with red light and siren on. This was something like I'd never seen in America or anywhere else I was in a chase. As that police car would go through the traffic, it would be like it was, traffic would open so that the police car could go through, and then it would just close behind it. It was like a trap. So we were on the tail of this police car. You could reach out and touch the bumper. This driver was one of the counterterrorism guys. He was a young guy. He was more like a race car driver. And it was a wild chase. And then on top of that, we were responding to a call, firearms used, and we were all unarmed in both of these cars. So there was some I was hanging on for dear life. I thought I'd seen some wild chases and rides from the Air Force in my days in the police field, but there was nothing like this that I'd ever experienced. So that was great memories from my time there in London. My journey continued over to Germany, where I was introduced to GSG-9 and my friend there, Captain Weigel, who was the adjutant to Major Wagner when they formed GSG-9. I developed relationships there and close friends, and Lemmy continued on after he retired, running my operation out of Germany. GSG-9 was legendary at the time, and they had been trained by the Israelis after the 1972 Munich Games, Global Games disaster. They were comprised of 5-man units, the air, land, and sea. And when GSG-9 was formed, they saw the dangers of the slowdown of a response if the unit was in the regular military command. GSG-9 was set up and removed from that normal military command, even though it had military people in it. And the commander, Major Wagner, when it was formed, who later became a general, reported directly to the chancellor, who directed them to respond to an event. Now listen to this. They had a team with an aircraft loaded with all of their equipment, ready to fly in 1 hour from the order given. That was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They had a team on standby. We Americans commented at the time, for commandos to be authorized in the air in the U.S. would take days or weeks. The event would probably be over. Along the way, I set up in Italy, and with friends in Israel, I directed more of my attention to the Far East. I connected to a retired police commander in Hong Kong who had defected from the Chinese and went to Hong Kong, where he later joined the Hong Kong Police Department. Along the way, they sent him to England to study at Scotland Yard. When I met him, he had been the head of the investigation division of the Hong Kong Police Department, and he also had a security firm. And we joined forces, and he became my station chief in Hong Kong. As our needs grew for information across the Far East, Lee, my friend there, had contacts across the Far East with former police people in Bangkok, Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, the Philippines. And he helped me set up operations in those areas with former police people staffing those stations and bringing us information on an ongoing basis. I set up a reporting system where we didn't have the internet at that time. That would have been great. For bi-monthly reports about conditions and events in these countries. I had tasked the operators to give me anything that might affect people traveling to their country, setting up companies, moving people there from U.S. For our clients who wanted to invest or set up companies in the region, and bringing their families there. Was it secure for families? Where would they need to live? And all schooling, all those conditions. One of the issues at this time in our world out of this area was the Golden Triangle. Many probably haven't heard about that. That's not the name you hear much about in the recent years. But this was where the jungle borders of Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar met. This was a major drug connection, and money and drugs flowed from there in attempts to wind up in the States. They came through Hong Kong to invest the money in the States to clean it up. So we had clients who were approached about investments, and the money was coming from Hong Kong. So they wanted us to determine, was the money drug money related or was it clean? So we worked going for years on cases like that, as well as other criminal and protective cases of clients going to Hong Kong. Excuse me here. At this time, I noticed I was getting a lot of political information. That was important to our clients, but it hadn't been my prime objective. Because if they wanted to invest in the country, they wanted to know what was the political leaders thinking, what was their thoughts for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out. Excuse me. And would it be stable for them to set up a company there, or would the mind of the government maybe change towards foreign companies being there? And this would be called confidential information or classified information normally. And I realized if I was still in the public sector, this information would have been greatly prized. While I was receiving this classified information, that would normally not go to outside sources. But I also was told by the officials across Europe and elsewhere that they would share things with me they wouldn't share with our government because of the Freedom of Information Act in America, and they were concerned about leaks, which they had happened. But as I received this information, why would they give it to me? Well, I was a private company. I wasn't a government. They were openly working with me and were able to do that. And I paid them as a contractor. So they didn't have any problems with doing it. Where if it had been a covert operation, somebody trying to recruit them for a government, that would have been treason. So the commercial cover operation is a very effective way to work. Well, the question I've been asked too, how does a commercial cover operation differ from covert operations? I was in a situation where we were doing commercial cover operations with a large client. And we were international. We were all over the Middle East and the world. And they wanted us to overlay the covert operation, tradecraft, onto this commercial operation. And I said, that won't work. And the reason? Well, in commercial cover, we're operating in true name. And we're, for all concerned, we're a private operation. As a private company, we want to be known, develop relationships with hotels, restaurants, events. We would take multiple targets we were recruiting or had recruited to the same place, showing them we were known and recognized, and we would go first class with everything we did, restaurants, hotels, cars, etc. And that gave us favor, that gave us credibility with the people that we were recruiting. Well, in a covert world, what happens is you would never do any of that. You wouldn't take more than one recruit. You personally try to recruit to the same hotel or restaurant, same event. You would never go back there. You would always go to different places. You would try to keep out of sight, not be recognized, and covert, which made it much more difficult to recruit people and sign them up for what you wanted them to do. And then things changed in the government intelligence work over the years. And I had an experience that focused in on that. And this was biometrics. In the old days, the government intelligence operators, and this is no top secret information, they would use multiple cover. They would have 2, 3, or 4 complete covers with passports, driver's license, credit cards, all that. And they would come and go into these countries under different cover. Well, the biometric system, when that started happening, began to change all of that, created real problems for government intelligence. I had been in and out of Saudi Arabia after 9/11. I developed relationships there. I set up an office in Riyadh. I had an office in Riyadh for several years. And I had a commercial visa with a 5-year visa with multiple entries so I could come and go. And I'd been in and out of there several times. I had been in Saudi Aramco. I had been in Riyadh, coming and going from both places. And this was I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th time or something. I've gone in, I don't remember exactly. I had went through the checkpoint, and the immigration person had checked me and stamped my passport. I started walking away. I got about 10 feet away. I heard a yell, sir, come back here. I said, oh, Lord, what now? My cover's been blown. And he looked at me and said, we don't have your picture or fingerprint. So my picture went on, my fingerprint went on. So definitely I was going to stay Phil Little coming in and out of Saudi Arabia or any place else. But that was one of the advantages we had of commercial cover. And it's no secret that a lot of governments have started trying to use this in different ways. But unfortunately, what I've discovered, they're not too good at covers sometimes. I broke some covers of people that was so easy to do. And it was dangerous from the operators who were expecting their cover to be secure. So that's still an ongoing problem. We won't go any further with that. But if you're going to try to put covert rules on a commercial cover operation, you increase 100-fold the risk of cover being blown due to observant people who see there's why are they trying to be so secret? Why are they disappearing and not coming back? And it raises questions, and they start asking questions like I've been asked so many times. Are you a government agent? And I smile and I just say, no, they can't afford me. And everybody laughs. Okay, that's good. Doing commercial cover is fun. And lots of benefits. You're first class, everything you're doing, and you get to travel the world and accomplish much, much more in effective information than if you were in the covert area. As I've said, all government operations of every country in the world has had to change with this biometric. Well, yes, it was time they have to get creative. We all have to do that in our field. Everything changes rapidly with technology today. If you have any questions or thoughts about this topic, please leave them on the any of the platforms, or you can email me at pi777@gmail.com. My friends, we're living in troubled times. Would you take the time to check out the candidates running for office this November? And choose the one, not automatically on the party you might be part of, or not party of, maybe you're an independent. But check them out and look for the candidate who follows the Constitution, protects our free speech, Second Amendment rights, religion, First Amendment, reduces taxes, wants government out of the lives of individuals, wants to have closed borders, wants to have energy independence. They want to reduce inflation and taxes, not raise them as some of the candidates do. And vote for the person, not the party. I have done that at times in my life. I encourage you. It's critical for the future of our country that you do that. Well, would you help me by liking, sharing, subscribing? And you know, hit that notification bell so you'll know when future posts come out. Will you step out of the crowd and let your voice be heard? You might say, how do I do that? Well, start where you live. Start with finding out what's going on in your city council, in your city or county, in your school districts. Get involved in electing school board members that will not stand for this woke ideology, CRT, gender training, confusion to our young people, and want to have our young people taught the basics of their life, math and English and history, about how America was really formed and why it was formed. You might have issues also in your family or business and you're not sure how to handle them, and you wonder, because I get asked this so much, I wished I would have thought about calling a private investigator when I had this problem. So you might have a problem that you say, I don't know how to handle this. I wonder if a private eye could help me. Well, send me the information at my email, pi777@gmail.com, and I will check it out and give you an option on how you might be able to proceed with some solution, and I will get back to you. Well, until next time, be safe. May God bless you, your family,